Well, hello and welcome to Split Informed and Split Smart. I am your host, Carl Roberts, and excited to be here for our show on the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. The intention behind Split Informed and Split Smart is to help all couples, amicable or hostile, to more easily reach possible, equitable, peaceful agreements in their divorce. It's my belief that everyone in their right mind or not, deep down, wants peace, love, and equality in their post-divorce life. SplitSmart was founded with the audacious goal of trying to prevent anyone from going through the divorce process, regardless of emotional state or personal disorder, and denying that peace, love, and equality from the other or their children. Granted, our goal is much easier said than done, but therein lies our mission. We know that the single difference between a good and ugly divorce is simply the presence of a bad actor. Bad actors can be one or both, man or woman, lawyer or litigant. And usually, bad actors are good people who have gotten tripped up by their emotions, bad advice from friends, family, or lawyer, and more often than people realize, personality disorders of being a narcissist or borderline personality disorder. I'm excited for my guest today, Miss Tracy Ann Moore-Grant, the Amicable Divorce Attorney in Georgia and founder of the Amicable Divorce Network. Our topic today is the Amicable Divorce Network. While on the surface, most all of us would choose to have an amicable divorce, sometimes it's easier said than done. But before getting into all that, thank you, Tracy Ann, for being here. And if you would, for the benefit of the audience, give us a little bit more introduction.
Sure. Thank you, Carl, for having me. My name is Tracy Ann Moore-Grant. Sorry, there's so many names there, but that's just reflective of my own divorce journey. I'm a divorce attorney, and I have been practicing law for 19 years in Georgia. I'm with the firm of Patterson Moore Butler, and we're located in Forsyth County, Georgia. If you're not familiar with the area, we're about 30 minutes outside of Atlanta to the north. I have practiced, like I said, solely in the area of family law for many years. In addition to being an attorney, I'm a mediator, an arbitrator, a guardian ad litem, a parent coordinator. And in 2019, I founded the Amicable Divorce Network.
Well, and so you've been practicing law for 19 years in divorce all that time?
Family law, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
I've made that mistake a lot of times. I think about divorce being family law, but there's a lot more that goes beyond just divorce, no doubt. No doubt. What kind of led you to family law?
I did several internships when I was back in law school, and the one that I liked the most was with Larry Rice, a great family law attorney out of Memphis, Tennessee. And I really enjoyed working there. I wanted to be a litigator and go to court. And I wanted to work with clients as opposed to being a more transactional attorney. And so that's what led me to family law. I think in my graduating class of probably close to 100 attorneys, I was, I think, the only person that had declared family law as their intended path at the time, although I see many others have stumbled into it. It always sort of drew me in.
Yeah, many stumble in, but then there are many that get out, I guess, aren't there, as well?
Indeed. Yes, it isn't for everybody.
Yeah, and I think that the people who get out are coming more from that contested and litigated side. I mean, that's where the real problem is. And certainly that's where, that's part of your impetus around amicable divorce. I mean, you have, again, for the lay person who hasn't had the fun or the experience or the journey thus far, they got to realize that there are two types of divorce. Mm-hmm. In court or out of court, or I'd say good or ugly versus good, where everybody wins or nobody wins with a lawyer type thing. And so amicable divorce in a broader context is just one, it is another label for alternative dispute resolution.
Yeah, I normally tell people there's three types of ways to get divorced. And the first is uncontested, which means you have no negotiation between you in regards to what an attorney is doing. So I have individuals who come to me who just want their paperwork drawn up properly. They sat down at the kitchen table, they worked it all out. A lot of times those individuals are attracted to the online forms, doing it themselves, going to the courthouse and getting the forms. And I always caution people against that. I would say about 20% of my practice is cleaning up what I call DIY divorces, because parties don't understand what they're signing. They don't understand tax ramifications. They don't understand how final things are. They don't put deadlines in. They don't put a lot of the required language that an attorney would help with. So always, for a low cost, I do it for a flat fee. A lot of attorneys can help you navigate the court system and get it done properly. It's always very frustrating to see people who are very uncontested, who would certainly hire a professional real estate agent to sell their home, but are fearful to get an attorney to handle their divorce when it touches on not just real estate, but retirement, kids, child support, alimony, division of assets, and you have all these very important things. Have it done professionally. So I consider that to be sort of the first way to get divorced, and the other end of that spectrum being a traditional contested divorce where you're utilizing the court system. And in the middle, we have amicable. So the amicable process that we've developed is entirely out of court. And we have, generally speaking, 2 attorneys, one for each party. And we have an out-of-court process where we exchange documents and we do verified financial statements and we negotiate on behalf of our client. But these are the individuals who want to be uncontested. They want to reach a resolution, but they acknowledge that they don't have the skill set to do so, whether it's emotional for them to negotiate with the other side, or they don't have the tools to negotiate child support, for example, and they need legal assistance with that. We have this process that is low conflict, streamlined, and lower conflict, personalized process. The 2 attorneys design the process for the parties. So it's an out-of-court way to get divorced and to hopefully get you to reaching a resolution. We do utilize mediation and arbitration as well.
So, going back to kind of the first kind of the people getting totally uncontested, I see that as good for those, really have no assets and no kids. I mean, so you go fill out some forms, more power to you, and just, whether you kind of almost do it right or wrong. I mean, it's just no assets and no kids, so kind of who cares? The court don't care.
Yeah.
And so, but then you step up with that, add some assets, add some complexity, add kids. Then it's certainly wise to have have some, other eyes on it, some professional eyes on it. But I mean, so what is different, and I also see kind of your process as being, it's collaborative law, but not collaborative law. What's the difference, or is there a difference? And, I know Georgia doesn't really, Georgia is not, collaborative law is not a thing, and that's the case in some states. So what's the difference between your Amicable Divorce Network and collaborative law?
Yeah, we certainly have a collaborative spirit, and we have in our network all the professionals you would need. But there's 2 main differences. Collaborative law, to be truly a collaborative law case, requires the parties to use 2 attorneys, 2 financial professionals, divorce coaches, mental health professionals. It requires all these professionals if you're doing a truly collaborative process and following their process and training. And my experience is that a normal family of normal means can't afford and doesn't need all those professionals. So with Amicable, we look at your case and we say, gosh, we do need you all to sit down with a parent coordinator, work out your parenting plan, but you all don't really need this other professional because it just isn't needed in your case. So we're able to build the team for you if one's even needed. Some parties have very few assets, but want us to handle that process for them. The other major difference with collaborative is in collaborative, there's no attorney-client privilege. So what happens in a collaborative case is if it breaks down and the court system is needed to utilize their systems in order to get a result, all of the professionals in the process have to excuse themselves. They can no longer work with the parties or represent one in the case, and the parties have to start over. With Amicable, we do not waive attorney-client privilege. It is the same as you have in any other case. And so if for some reason, and we've had very few instances so far where this has happened, but in the event it does happen that the parties have to excuse themselves from the amicable process, file with the court system and use the court process, you can continue on with your same attorney that you've been utilizing and not have to start over with somebody else. So those are the two main differences, is that you can continue on with the same professionals and you're not required to use a team of professionals, although our network has everybody that you would need should you need them for your divorce case, from mental health to professional, mortgage, real estate, certified divorce lending professionals, CDFAs. We have everybody that you could need available to you in the network. In fact, yesterday I was mediating a case. We had a lot of mortgage questions that came up about how child support is treated in a case, and could this person qualify? What's the timeline? Because we didn't want to sign an agreement in mediation. I called a certified divorce lending professional in the network. She answered her cell phone. She answered the questions right there on the spot. We were able to move forward and get a resolution in the case because we had immediate access to that information. So it's a really great network with a lot of valuable resources to the parties should they need them.
Well, fantastic. So yeah, so like a successful marriage, it takes two to tango, right?
Sure does.
For a successful divorce, you got to have two to tango. Both have to kind of want the same goal outcome, peaceful outcomes. What people don't, I guess, again, those who haven't really kind of had the experience in their lives don't realize that, it just takes one to make a divorce ugly. And,
it does. Mm-hmm.
And that's where I kind of come in and talk about bad actors.
Yep.
And so let's talk about, so what should people be thinking about? Again, you've got this, and whether or not your advice is different for a woman or a man. But in the early stages, they have not yet spoken to the other. Mm-hmm. They're not really sure how two scenarios. They're not sure how the other one's going to react, or they know the other one's going to be bat crazy, type thing. What's your advice in those type of two different scenarios, and if there is a difference for men versus women? Yeah,
I don't really have gender different advice. This is really sort of emotional advice, I guess, for people, and of course that's something that we deal with all the time. So I meet with people often, and I always recommend people to meet with an attorney about your case and ask them some key questions. You need to be asking first an attorney how many of their cases settle. And if they're not saying that a large percentage, somewhere around above 70% settle outside of court, that should be a red flag.
Well, let me interject there, because
yes.
So picking that lawyer, sometimes can be a crapshoot, right?
Right.
And certainly people are often driven by their emotions by the time they make out that sure. they do that first reach out. Mm-hmm. And so what I really caution people about, is the attorney says, well, this is what you should do. I can get you that. You're entitled to this. Those are buzzwords that are sending you down that path of conflict. So figuring out, so again, kind of promoting you here, not really me, but more promoting this, the whole, don't friggin' do it. So you got to be smart, regardless of where your emotions are. You got to be smart in figuring out with your attorney. You can, if you go into this thinking this is going to be a battle, it's going to be a battle.
Right. And I think first, parties, I always caution them, no matter how angry and upset you are, you need to understand that two things are going to happen. One is, by the time you get to court, you're going to feel differently, because particularly where we're located and a lot of other jurisdictions, it takes a long time before you're actually standing in front of a judge. So that moment that you think you're going to have where you tell your story and the judge is going to side with you and you are going to be vindicated, first of all, it's a long time down the road and you're going to feel differently by the time you're standing there. And that road is paved with gold because it is expensive and it is high conflict. You have been on a battle by the time that you're on that road. In our jurisdiction, you would have already done discovery, you would have failed at a mediation, you would have gone down a really tough road to get there. And then, I hate to say it, but there's no emotional justice in the court system. The judges are so used to seeing adultery, things that have just destroyed families, that your situation has to be incredibly heinous and rare for the judge to really pay attention and to give you a personalized result. They have so many cases, especially with COVID, that are backlogged on their calendar that they're just doing the best that they can to move through. And people often walk out of a courtroom feeling like they weren't heard. They didn't get the result that they expected. And a lot of times it's because their attorney has set them up for failure. I hate to say that, but there are conflict-driven attorneys. And what people need to understand that are facing divorce is that attorneys make money on conflict. The simple fact of the matter is that by founding the Amicable Divorce Network, and every single attorney that has signed up to be a member of this network has signed up saying, I understand that I will make less money doing amicable cases and I don't care, because it's the right thing to do for people and it's how I want to operate my practice. So any attorney that is signed up for our network is saying, I want lower conflict cases. I'm not going to drive up conflict in cases. And in doing that, I understand I'm going to make less money. And think of how rare that is. Think of the professional individuals that have said that it is more important to me to help families than it is my bottom line and my pocketbook. And so I'm so proud of all of our professionals and anybody, that reaches out and wants to be a part of our organization across the board, because we vet people for engaging in fair billing practices and being resolution focused. So every member, they don't just get to fill out an application. We contact their references. For attorneys, we ask for former clients. We ask for mediators who have mediated for them that are going to vouch for them, and colleagues who they work well with. It's really important to us that these individuals help people through the process. And so for individuals, I always tell people, no matter how hurt you feel, no matter how angry you feel, what you need to understand is the court system is not the venue that is going to give you peace, resolution, or that pound of flesh that you want to make yourselves feel better. It just isn't going to happen, and it just isn't set up that way.
It's a crapshoot.
It is an absolute crapshoot that you will ever appear in front of a judge, and that the judge you do appear in front of is going to receive the information, if it's even going to get into evidence, and give you any result that's close to the one that you think you deserve. So I tell people, give your attorney a smaller amount of money and take that extra money that you would have spent on the divorce, go on the vacation of a lifetime, invest it in a home that you enjoy and you can build yourself, set it aside to go to a great therapist that's going to help you through this. Go on some adventure that will bring you joy, or invest it in a cause that brings you, joy and peace. Because throwing it towards anger and throwing it towards the court process, in the end, you are not going to be in a place that is good for you as an individual, for your family, and especially for your finances.
It is just, it boils down to, you want to do this for $5,000 or $300,000?
Exactly. Yeah.
And and if you've got more assets, it's going to be more than 300.
Exactly. Yeah. So attorneys are going to see dollar signs. You walk in and you say, I own a business. I have $1 million in a 401k. Certain attorneys are going to be like, bling, bling, bling. A question that I have never been asked ever in 19 years of practice, and a client should always ask their attorney, is, do you have a minimum billing hour requirement? And how will that impact my case? I have never, ever in 19 years of meeting with hundreds, if not thousands of potential clients, ever been asked that. And if you're meeting particularly with an associate attorney at one of those big firms, I can guarantee you they have a minimum billing requirement. And what that means is that as they are looking at their cases, if they are not just busy on other cases, going to trial and things that are consuming their time, then they have to come up with things on cases to do to meet their minimum billing requirement. So when people join our network, that's a question that they're asked. Do you have a minimum billing requirement? And if they do, their supervisor has to sign off on their membership, understanding that it may impact their billing to be a member of our network. So,
hey, Tracy Ann, and I'm going to have to interrupt because we need to kind of move to a break. But I want to when we come back, I do want to kind of pick up now, kind of shifting from the lawyer. We'll shift to the individual and what advice you will give them to, and they're not sure how that other one's going to react, how we get that other one to come into this process. Okay. So anyway, I'm Carl Roberts, host of Split Informed and SplitSmart. My guest today is Tracy Ann Moore-Grant, with the founder of the Amicable Divorce Network. Tracy and her team, or her network, can be found at amicableddivorcenetwork.com. I'm Carl Roberts. We'll be back in about 90 seconds. Thanks so much. Hello, my name is Carl Roberts, and welcome back to Split Informed and SplitSmart with my guest, Tracy Ann Moore-Grant, Georgia divorce attorney and the founder of the Amicable Divorce Network.com. Tracy, thanks again for being here. And let's kind of pick up. We closed out the last time about finding the right lawyer and how important that is, and how important it is not to be driven by your emotions, and not to be driven by your emotions. Period.
Yeah.
But so now let's talk about, so that person in the early stage, whether they've talked to the other person or not, they want, a good divorce, an amicable divorce. They want to get out of this smartly, but they're not. But the other one ain't quite so sure. The other one is more emotional. The other one is wanting that emotional justice. The other one is, narcissist or borderline or whatever the case may be. How do we empower that one person to help bring the other person along?
Yeah, it's very, very difficult if you have two parties who aren't on the same page. But I have a situation quite often where somebody maybe listens to a podcast like this, or I write articles, or they come across our website, or they're referred to us and they say, I want an amicable divorce, but I either haven't talked to my spouse or I'm almost certain that they are not going to go for it. So we try to gear them in that direction as much as possible prior to anybody filing for divorce. Our process is entirely outside the court system. So a lot of times once a divorce has been filed and served, the train has left the station, so to speak. So we try to catch everybody prior to a divorce being filed in any way. So when I have a party that really wants an amicable resolution, we do everything that we can to get the message to the other party. Generally speaking, everybody wants to be reasonable and they want to save money. There are, of course, a handful of people that, I'll talk about. You sort of touched on personality disorders. I'll touch on that in a second. But for the parties where you have two, relatively well-intentioned individuals, when I meet with somebody, I send the other spouse a letter that says I've been retained for an amicable divorce. I send them literature on the network. And I also send them a list of our network attorneys that are in their area. And hopefully if they look at that list, they see that, gosh, these are the same attorneys I would be reaching out to anyway. Most of our attorneys handle all types of divorce, not just amicable. So if they research them, they'll see, gosh, these are, very experienced attorneys. And if they're involved and, they'll represent me, I can get a great result, and they're going to do a good job. So we send a cover letter saying that our client seeks a low conflict, low cost resolution. We think that they would want the same, and hope that they hire somebody in the network. Generally doing that, quite honestly, is incredibly successful. I would say about 8 out of 10 people who get the letter do hire somebody in the network. They research us. They say, gosh, I want to save my money too. This all sounds very good to me. So no matter how complicated the case is, you had touched previously on people with a lot of assets or a business, it can still be resolved amicably. If you think about it, even those cases where we've had two business valuators who are arguing with one another in a more contested proceeding, and have all these, assets that need to be valued. Once people have that information, 9 times out of 10, they still sit down at the mediation table and reach a resolution. They aren't putting those issues in front of the court. And one of the reasons that they don't is because it's incredibly complicated and incredibly expensive to have all these experts come to court and testify. So we have all those professionals in our network, no matter how complicated the case is, to help the parties streamline the process. They might agree to use one business valuator and go with that expert's opinion on matters, have their assets valued by one expert in particular. So something you touched on was narcissists and borderline. And
let me kind of jump in. I can't, how much I appreciate the idea of that letter, because in the traditional sense, the mistake people make is they go to lawyer up.
Yeah.
And that lawyer up certainly connotates conflict.
Yes.
And in this case, or how you're approaching it, or how your network approaches it, and and I hope the others in your network send out a similar type letter. But that lawyering up, putting the letter, you're not sending a shot across the bow. You're sending that olive branch.
Exactly. And so something to understand with the amicable process, it doesn't mean that you're agreeing to the offer of the other party. Each party still has an attorney, and we still negotiate for our client. But the reality is you have two reasonable attorneys who can work well together, who can have an adult conversation. There's no court to file competing motions. And so we are able to reach reasonable, streamlined resolutions for parties because we're also individuals who are giving realistic advice. Attorneys don't give realistic advice to drive conflict. They say, oh, I can get this for you in court, or I can guarantee this result, or let's just roll the dice. And then what they do is when the judge gives a different result that they professionally knew was very likely, then they then blame it on the judge. Oh gosh, well, that's out of my hands. The judge did that to you. You know, I did the best I could. The judge issued that result when they knew very well all along that that was a very unlikely result to occur. So that's what's very disappointing. And yes, all of our members are trained in the amicable divorce process. We actually just last week had our annual training. So they all get the letter, they all get the forms, they all know how to cater the letter to the situation. So that's certainly something we're all doing. Something you touched on was personality disorders with narcissists and borderline. And so we do have cases that we don't recommend for amicable. So one thing to note is, I would say as a lay person, if you are just a person going through a divorce, we hear the narcissist buzzword now as kind of the current term all the time. Narcissist, a true narcissist that can't engage in the amicable process is very, very rare. In my experience, in 19 years, I've come across 3. I know what their names are. I remember those cases. They definitely stood out to me. So even if you're thinking you're dealing with a narcissist, you might just be dealing with an old-fashioned jerk. And we're used to dealing with jerks. So that's not anything new to us. So don't let that prevent you from trying to start this process, because you may just be dealing with a jerk, and we know how to handle those. But if you do have a true narcissist, you might need the court system, its rules, access to the judge to keep them in line. We do have a process. You do sign things under oath, under penalty of perjury. We do have deadlines. But a narcissist, a real true one, might try to manipulate that system. The reason that our attorneys and professionals, our mental health professionals, everybody involved in the network is required to have 5 years of experience to even apply is because we know a true narcissist from somebody who isn't. And the attorneys will be able to say, 1, this process is or isn't good for your situation, or we need to exit this process and utilize the court system because I've now identified as a professional what's best for my client. And again, we've done a ton of cases through the process, and this has happened. To my knowledge, we've never had to exit for a narcissist or a borderline person. So it is incredibly rare. So you can still utilize us.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's so much depends upon how you start out. If you start out lawyering up, either you or that other one, it probably is going to act like a narcissist, whether or not they are or not. But it's how you start the process.
Yeah.
And then if you start it with conflict, somebody's going to become a narcissist. Somebody's going to be the bad actor. Mm-hmm. Bad actors, one or both, man or woman, lawyer or litigant. Mm-hmm. And again, part of my belief is that the court system, although they have all these rules designed to kind of protect the common good, the way that they enforce those rules, it requires a motion to be filed, mm-hmm. which in essence is this big hurdle of money, time, and legal question. Mm-hmm. For most people to kind of overcome. So in that sense, without compliance to all those rules, an effective enforcement of compliance to all those rules, it really enables and encourages the bad actors to try to deceive and put the onus back on you to try to prove otherwise or file a motion.
Yeah, a lot of people feel further abused by the court system just because of how it's set up. Like, I'm the good actor. I'm the one who's having to pay for these motions and to try to enforce this, and this court isn't listening to me. And it could be the very fact of COVID. Like, the court is overloaded, so they're paying attention to the criminal case where somebody's on fire and, you know, something has to be done constitutionally for that. And your family law case is way down the line over here. And that just is the reality of the current situation. So we're able to divorce people start to finish online from the comfort of your home with our process. So it has been a benefit to people, you know, during COVID. But not just narcissists, but we have cases we deal with that have mental health issues, substance abuse issues, things like that, where people maybe don't want to be embarrassed and have their information in the public record of the court system. And so an amicable case is a good way to resolve those issues privately for people. Also, because we design the process, it can be as fast or as slow as you want. So I've dealt with clients that have an incredible amount of anxiety, who are also at a different point in the divorce process. They're maybe still mourning the relationship and they're, you know, not going as fast as the other spouse. We can take a slower approach for those parties. So the two attorneys have a planning meeting and sort of come up with the process for the parties. How long does it need to be? Does it need to be shortened? Do we need mediation? Do we need to exchange documents? So with our process, it can really be catered for the parties and also be kept private. So for those people who don't want all their dirty laundry aired in the court system, their financial records, you know, that their neighbors can, you know, look up, it's also a good result for them as well.
Let me kind of interrupt, because one of the things that you're talking about, again, dirty laundry. You know, we all know how bad, you know, the criminal justice system is, right? Mm-hmm. Really, you know, there's a lot of efforts to kind of reform and work down the criminal justice path. And quite often, and when family court kind of gets in there, when you have substance abuse or sometimes even domestic violence and other issues that kind of very serious issues that come into play, going to court is just going to exacerbate all those trouble, exacerbate those problems, exacerbate, you know, the strife and turmoil, even for the good actor.
Right.
And so, and again, as that good actor may or may not be trying to punish the bad actor.
Yeah.
You know, seek that emotional justice from the bad actor or punish him for whatever ill they did. It's problematic. So, you know, I really like your comment about, you know, it's not just about kind of keeping it, you know, not airing your dirty laundry, but it's not exacerbating a problem.
Exactly. I've had domestic violence victims go through the process who have said, I really appreciate this process because I don't have to tell my story and relive that again for somebody else and hope that they understand or believe me. You know, the other party knows what happened. You know, we are just trying to work through this so that I can get out of this relationship without being subjected to the court system. So we've dealt with those cases as well. And again, our attorneys have domestic violence experience and those backgrounds to assist those clients. That's why we don't take brand new attorneys or mediators or mental health professionals into the network, because we can help parties with very few assets and very few issues, but we're also designed to help the most complicated of cases, to keep them out of the court system, because those are the ones that really would be either re-abused by the court system, not heard by the court system, or just an incredible cost associated with explaining your complicated assets to a judge who might not have a math background, who just might not understand what you're talking about. And so, Carl, you know, I want to thank you for what you developed with your computer program, because it's very helpful to the amicable process as well, because one of the things we're all about is being organized. Transparency with our documentation, and, you know, to have that resource available to us is incredibly helpful for what we do network wide. So, you know, thank you for your passion also with getting people, you know, organized, transparent with their information, and in the right direction.
Well, thank you for taking me there, because I was going to have to take it there. I certainly appreciate that, Tracy. And Tracy, and So the whole concept around SplitSmart is to kind of make it easy. So help get people get organized, but at the root of that, is to be transparent to one another. So if you got transparency, you got to have the transparency as a foundation to build trust. And so trust is the key to, reaching any amicable divorce agreement. You got to build that trust, whether it's, tentative or not. You've got to build that trust to be able to reach those agreements, to move on with your life, and to, hopefully kind of get on into that more peaceful coexistence, where you're enjoying life, where you got that kind of equitable resolution and all that other fun stuff. So it is, organization with money and or kids is just incredibly important, and organization as well as transparency about what your positions are, so that we can negotiate and mediate in good faith and in the best interest of all, not of one. But before we wrap up, Tracy, let me just kind of ask you, any big pearls of wisdom that you hope that our listeners may have taken away from this, or that you may have not mentioned that you would like to share with our listeners?
First, I think if you're approaching divorce, meet with a couple of attorneys, ask them what their philosophy is about divorce. Ask them if they have a minimum billing requirement. Ask them how many of their cases settle, what they would do to streamline your process, and ask them if they have referrals for other attorneys that they work well with, because that would be, so to speak, a match for you and your spouse to work with two attorneys who are still representing your best interest, but can have a civil conversation. You can save yourself thousands of dollars. Second is go ahead.
Tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands. Absolutely. Yes. We've done some research here, and the average amicable case costs parties around $5,000, whereas the average divorce in general costs people $25,000.
Oh, that's so low. You're way undercutting that.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. The more complicated cases, we've definitely seen $100,000, and up. So these, cases we're able to streamline and get people through the process. Our organization currently is in Georgia and expanding. We've just welcomed members from Alabama, Louisiana, California, and some other areas. So if you're interested in being a member of our network, we have opened up our membership to really anybody in the world. We're opening up internationally as we develop our website. It's going to be scaling over the next 90 days to offer some different bells and whistles to both our members and the public. If you're interested, there's an application on our website at amicableddivorcenetwork.com, or you can email me directly, tracy@amicableddivorcenetwork.com. Our membership is limited by geography. So for example, we're only allowing so many attorneys per state based on the population of that state, as well as all of our other categories. The reason that we do that is to maintain the integrity of the organization, so that it's a controllable amount of people that we can vet for the ideals that are important to us, and to have a good group of people that works well together. So we are really hoping that individuals who are listening to this in other areas are interested in joining our cause as we get bigger and welcome members from other areas, because we think people, really everywhere can benefit by being able to identify amicable-minded professionals in the divorce industry, because it is an industry that it's called that for a reason. So, save your money, have a peaceful a divorce as possible, but get but save your money on something that'll help you and help your family. Put it in your kids' college account, take a vacation of a lifetime, but giving the money to the attorneys is not gonna get you what you want in the end. So we can help you. We can help not take your money.
Well, Tracy Ann, thank you again for being here, and really thank you for all that you do, and to help people, help families, help people, individuals, couples, families reach a better conclusion to their marriage.
Thank you, Paul.
This is great. This has been Split Informed and Split Smart with Carl Roberts and a guest Tracy Ann Moore-Grant discussing Amicable Divorce Network. Please join us on Tuesday, September 7th at 11 a.m. Eastern for our next show with guest Elisa Karras, attorney turned mediator. Split Informed and Split Smart. Bye now.